Hi, I'm Adrian and I'm here on the lovely island of Sri Lanka to tell you about the strategic case study examination of CIMA and what LearnCIMA.com, based here in Sri Lanka, can do to help you pass the examination. Now, I have 25 years experience of teaching the CIMA examinations, and they are very challenging. And in 2015, CIMA made it even more challenging by introducing the integrated case study for the strategic level. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the structure of that examination, to tell you the competencies that you're going to need to demonstrate to pass the examination, and to introduce some of the skills and techniques that will help you to pass the exam. Now, in other LearnCIMA.com videos, we will tell you about the specifics of the examination you're taking. There are going to be 4 examination sittings every year, and each one will contain and be based upon a different industry and a different piece of pre-seen material. Okay, so the objectives of the video. Firstly, I want to help you understand the actual strategic case study examination structure. Then introduce you to the competencies you're going to need to pass the examination. Finally, give you some tips on the techniques you're going to need to get the marks you deserve in the examination room. Now, as we can see, the exam structure is quite complex. There are 5 variants of the examination. That means on different days, people will be taking different examinations. And the exam that you take have 3 main tasks. That is 3 sets of documents you're going to have to give to the examiner. As you can see, it's based upon a common pre-seen piece of case material. And this comes out 7 weeks before your examination. It contains information about a particular company and an industry. Your job is to understand that material and the industry and assume the role of a strategic management accountant on examination day, able to give advice to management about what they need to know to run their business. And that advice will be based upon your 3 strategic examinations: business strategy, financial strategy, and risk strategy. On the exam day, you'll be given a PC computer to take the examination on. No more written examinations for CIMA. Now, this PC only runs a word processor program. It behaves rather like Microsoft Word. I'll come a bit later on to some of the differences from Word so that you're prepared. And the day in the exam room represents an office assignment. So you'll be submitting emails and reports and memos, and not things like essays. You're reporting either to the CFO or possibly straight to the corporate board of the company. And you're provided with a series of triggers. These are tasks to undertake. And usually you have an hour or even less to give the examiner what they require. Now, a trigger is an additional task that you have to actually undertake, and it gives you a deadline, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. In the exam room, once 60 minutes is up, the screen goes blank and you have to move to the next task. It's a very busy office. Once you complete your first set of tasks, you move on, you undertake the second task. Once you're on the second task, you do the third task, and so on. There are no complex calculations in this examination. You've passed all of those to get to this level. When you get to the strategic case study, it's about making the numbers speak to give business advice. Let's talk about the pilot strategic case study examination. This was released to give students and tutors an idea of what to expect when the examinations went live in 2015. The pilot examination pre-seen material concerned a company called Cast. Now, Cast was an online retailer, rather like Amazon might be, and it had a common IT platform but several different business units. It featured a new chief executive officer and a lot of uncertainty about the future of the company. There was information given to us in several documents about competitors, about risks, the nature of the board and the people on it. There was information about internal audit. There was information about the company's corporate social responsibility strategies, and also there was information there about the final accounts of the company in the preceding year. We were given share price data, and data upon 2 rival online stores. And one of those stores, a company called Great Line, we had a set of accounts for. So this invites students and tutors to start speculating upon the sorts of questions that might come up on examination day. Now what you see here is the opening screen of the examination. And the first thing to notice is going to be how many tasks you will face in the exam. Now according to this opening screen, what you see is 3 tasks. Now that's slightly misleading because each task can contain several aspects. For example, task number 1 might contain a requirement for a piece of a report, but also an email on the same topic. Notice the time allocation, 60 minutes per task, a 3-hour examination. There is no reading time in the strategic case study. As soon as you start the examination, the clock is starting to tick down, and you can only have 180 minutes. Now what you see here is the beginning of the exam. This is the first trigger. And it's worth pausing at this point to read this. So, what you see there is an extract from the mission statement of the company that says the company wishes to delight customers. This is an online selling organisation. It also describes its service level agreement with suppliers that say that suppliers must give it high quality service and very competitive prices. But at the bottom, it tells us that there's a potential illegality in their relationships with suppliers because they may be accused of requiring uncompetitive prices from the supplier. In other words, our company, Cast, can receive better prices than the same supplier will offer to other retailers. That's the first document. Look closely in the top right-hand side of the screen. You can see a clock. It says 59.33, 59 minutes, 33 seconds remaining. Clicking the next button takes you to the tasks. Now, the tasks aren't like conventional examinations where you've got a part A and a part B. You have to read through what the client, in this case the CFO, wants you to do. It's worth pausing again just to read through that. And we can see here that she requires 2 documents. The tasks are she requires a report upon the risks and main issues if the company were to publish its new mission statement. And secondly, the CFO requires you to say something about the commercial implications of their relationship with their suppliers in the light of an email received from the supplier. And that email from the supplier quotes some dispatch records in which it's quite clear they're not giving 100% next day dispatch as they said they would. And also it points out that this company will not give priority to Cast's customer orders if the company itself has got orders waiting from its own customers. Okay, let's look at the competencies that are being assessed in the strategic case study examination. Now what you see here are 3 circles. These 3 circles show the competencies being assessed at the operational, managerial and strategic level. The strategic case study examines 25% marks for each of the 4 competencies required by CIMA. And you can see that those competencies are described as being core accounting and finance skills, the green area, business acumen, the red area, people skills, the blue area, and leadership skills, the silver area. What do those competencies actually mean? Well, before we move on to those, who are you? Well, you're given a persona in the examination, and CIMA call the persona Fiona, a person's name. Now, you don't have to be called Fiona in the examination room, but CIMA uses this to indicate the level of responsibility you have. And as you can see, you have a strategic role. You report to the board on strategic matters. You are very concerned about the risks of the business and where the financing to support the strategy will come from. In other words,
you're an expert upon the papers E3, P3 and F3. Now the first competence is called Core Accounting and Finance Skills. Now for examination purposes, CIMA has simplified this to technical skills. But the phrase Core Accounting and Finance Skills comes from the Chartered Global Management Accounting Competency Framework. And that framework defines what it means. And here you can see a list of skills. Now the ones in blue are deemed to have been covered at the operational and managerial level. So we must expect the strategic case study to focus on the ones in black. Management reporting and analysis, corporate finance and treasury, risk management and control, taxation and accounting information systems. And you can see corporate finance and treasury management and risk management are of course the F3 and P3 syllabuses. Second group of competencies here is called business acumen. Again, in the examination it's simplified to business skills. And these skills are strategy, understanding the market environment, improving business processes, managing business relationships, and understanding the macro environment of the business. In other words, the E3 syllabus. People skills is the third group of competencies, and this includes influence, negotiation, and collaboration. The fourth group of competencies are leadership skills. Things like team building, motivating, and, again from the E3 syllabus, change management. Examines more than just those four competencies. There are two further competencies, integration, but also ethics, integrity and professionalism. In fact, the integration counts for 9 of the 100 marks available in the exam. It's a separate set of skills that we saw earlier on, the idea of joining together several tasks and saying what was the overall impact upon, in that case, shareholder value. But also, you are required to demonstrate an ethical and professional attitude to the work you do. And, looking at the pilot paper, the marks for ethics were given against the people skills mark allocation of the exam. Okay, what it takes to pass. Now, the slide you see there represents the result you'll receive after you take the examination. You won't simply get a pass or fail. You get a matrix like this. And there are several things you have to do to pass this examination. At the bottom you see it says score greater than 60%. One thing you must do in the examination is to get more than 60 of the 100 marks available. Now, CIMA examinations before 2015 required 50 marks, so you might think this has got a bit tougher. But getting 60 marks is not all you have to do, because you can see that the competencies have a threshold number of marks that you must achieve. You must get a third of the total available marks for each of the competencies and 60% or more of the total marks to pass the examination. You can't try to pass the examination with only one or two of the competencies. Let's look at some examples of how to pass and how to fail. Here's a candidate who failed. Now you can see that CIMA in their results of the candidate had said that they're competent against each of the competencies. Before we spoke about plus the integration. But they only got the minimum level of competence, and when you add up a third of all the marks available, they get 34% as their overall mark, which is less than 60%, and therefore they fail the examination. This next candidate doesn't do any better. This candidate here has managed to get more than 60%. They've managed to get 67%. But looking closely, they didn't do very well at leadership skills. Here you can see they didn't achieve 8, they only achieved 5. And so therefore, fortunately, they have to take the exam again. And they can't take the case that they took here and failed, they have to take the new one in 13 weeks' time. Finally, a candidate that passes. This candidate has managed to get more than 60%, they got 77. and they manage to be competent under each of the skills. So to pass an examination like this, you need not only to get a lot of marks, but you have to put in a good performance against each of the 5 competencies that you're being judged upon. Let's talk now about how to do that. Approaching the strategic case study examination. Well, this really needs 3 stages of approach, really. The first one is what happens when the pre-CIMA material comes out. Then there's the practice you can do before the exam day. And then, of course, there's your performance on the exam day. Now, the pre-CIMA material will come to you 7 weeks before the examination window. The examination window is the week in which you take the exam. So you have 7 weeks to prepare. Now, tuition companies like LearnCIMA.com receive that pre-CIMA material several weeks earlier. So as soon as you receive the material, we'll be ready to give you some support. When you receive the material, the first thing to do is to read the documents you've been given. The pre-CIMA material can be anything up to 30 pages long. And what you have to do as you read that through is to identify the theoretical aspects of the material. Where is their P3 material? Where is their E3 material? Where is their F3 material? Try to consider the strengths of the business, its weaknesses, its strategic weaknesses, its business weaknesses. Consider its risks. And try to form an idea of the people in the case and how good they are. And above all, learn their names. And of course, identify who is the Chief Financial Officer, because that is the person you'll be reporting to in the exam. Now, one thing we like to do is to identify issues for the exam day. Now remember, there are 5 variants of the examination, and each of the variants contains at least 3 tasks. So that means there's lots of potential issues that could come up. But think in terms of opportunities and threats. Some small amount of reading around the industry is useful too. For example, the pilot case study was on Cast, which was an e-commerce company. So it would have been sensible to have looked at the real-world Amazon and some of the articles on Amazon, but also other firms like eBuyer or eBay. In fact, anything with E in it would have been a helpful thing to look at before the exam to give some ideas of how the business might be able to develop or the real-world risks and problems it might face. But as I said, try to get some examination practice in. Now, you can try practicing against the pilot paper or the past papers of the strategic case study. But LearnCIMA.com will be producing study materials and mock examination and simulations that can help you. So try and get some simulations and mocks. And once you've completed them against the clock, try and get them professionally marked and get feedback and improve. Do not leave this all to the examination day. Whilst you're practicing and on the examination day, you need an approach to actually deal with the task you're being given. So, I suggest a 5-step approach to each task. So imagine it's examination day and you're looking at task number 1. The first thing to do is to read the task through. And whilst you read it through, the first thing to do is to find where the Chief Financial Officer asks you to do something. Don't just simply read the reference material and then find the task. Go and find the task first. You'll probably find there's 2 subjects you've been asked about. Try to think about which paper this particular task involves. Is it E3? Is it P3? Is it F3? That gives you a guide to what it's looking for and the skills you need to show. Identify the format. Is it an email, a report, a briefing memo? Or is it an open choice for you, in which case you must decide the most appropriate format? And as we'll see, that's a leadership skill. Is there any particular person it's for? Is it for the CFO's eyes, in which case perhaps it could be informal? Or is it for the board, in which case it has to be a much more formal report style? And lastly, is there any particular emphasis that's concerning the CFO? What exactly does she require or he require to know? Once you've identified the task and the elements of the task, read the reference materials. And as you read the reference materials, try to pick out of it the information relevant to the task you've been set. Don't just read it like it might be an interesting story. You have to read it for the information in it that you can then make use of in your reports. Also, think about how it concerns the the concerns of the CFO. Just now we looked at the pilot paper and we saw the ecology issue. But those ecologists were interested only in carbon emissions. So it wouldn't have been appropriate then to actually start talking about things like exploited labour or possibly recycling of old product, because that wasn't what the CFO was worried about. Arrange your thoughts. Think in terms of the technical skills you're going to show, the business skills, the people skills, and the leadership skills. And remember, you've got to get a third of the available marks in total on the paper for each of those 4 groups of skills. And one approach I'll show you in a second is you can rule that up into a kind of a planner. But identify where those skills are going to be. For example, the technical skills are mostly coming from the P3 examination syllabus and the F3 examination syllabus, so look for those. Things to do with risk and internal controls, things with internal audit and post-investment audit, that's P3. F3, cost of capital, raising finance, dividend policy decisions, integrated reporting. These are the sorts of things that will be F3 skills. Now, as far as business skills are concerned, they largely come from the E3 syllabus, the strategic, environmental analysis kind of issues. Things to do with performance measurement, they'll be coming from the E3 syllabus. They'll be regarded as business skills. But then you have, of course, the people skills. Think in terms of the interests and responses of people affected by the decision. And leadership skills is about giving a clear structure and message that compels the person reading the document to agree with your point of view and to take action based upon it. The 5th step, of course, is you have to type your final answer. Now, some tips. One thing you could do is to rule up a planner, like the one you see in front of you here, with 4 columns, 1 for each skill. In the exam, you don't have rough paper, but you will have access to something to write upon. It could be a whiteboard on the computer itself you can write upon using a light pen, or alternatively, a laminate, a reusable piece of paper next to you while at the computer. You could rule things up this way. Alternatively, you could just type them as headings onto the word processing part of the program and then fill them in later. But think in terms of what technical points am I going to make? What business skill points can I make? What people points can I make? What leadership points can I make? Obviously, it depends upon the technical parts of the syllabus. If the topic in the task is internal audit, it's a pretty obvious clue. It's a P3 type of question. If it's about SWOT analysis, then it's going to be E3. A few ideas might be to think about the broader business skills that go beyond the E3 syllabus. Think about the mnemonic BESTO. Have a look at the business aspects of the problems, the economic, the social, the technological, and also the operational. You don't have to mention all of these, but these headings trigger things off in your mind that you think, oh, I can make a point about that because it relates to this particular problem and I can get marks for it. When you get people skills, think about the stakeholder interests. And stakeholders, we know, are internal, connected and external. They are going to be management and staff, suppliers, customers, investors. They can be government bodies, they can be interest groups and so forth. Think also about competitors. Competitors will also respond to the strategy. You have to talk about them. Also, under people skills, any ethical issues. Things connected with your professional behaviour as a chartered management accountant. Things connected with your personal behaviour. And, of course, the whole notion of corporate citizenship and behaviour of the business. Under people skills, there's also the issue of change. And that, of course, comes back to E3. I think change management is actually marks given under people skills in. So look for sources of resistance and talk about them, how to overcome barriers, talk about where you might have to avoid problems or negotiate, and the overall impression of what you write. The leadership skill. Is the document you provide structured well? Is it suitable for the use it's going to be put? So if the CFO says, I need a briefing paper to read at the next board meeting, don't give her an essay. She can't read it while she speaks. Try to use short paragraphs, lots of subheadings. The word processing package allows you to use bold, underline and italics, so use them. Also, if the CFO gives you a request, she wants a report with 2 sections, then give her that report with 2 sections. Try to use an opening summary paragraph to give assurance that you know what you're going to say. Try and say how important each issue you're making is, the main point, other additional points you might say, to give contrast to your points. But most of all, your message should be upbeat, motivational, and trying to give the recipient a course forward and knowing what to do. So as I said, learncima.com to tell you what you need to know to pass a strategic case study examination. We will be creating videos analysing the pre-seen material that you'll be facing in your examination. Simulations. We can give you practice as well. We wish you the very best of luck in the strategic case study examination. Thanks for your time.